The needle was already in my arm when she realized her mistake. I felt it in the tendons of her fingers before I saw it in her face. The veil have 7 joints in each hand, and they move like water when they're calm, like ice cracking when they're not. Siratel's hand went to ice. The plunger was 3/4 down. She froze with her thumb still on it and her white inner eyelid sliding closed and open and closed again, which is what they do instead of swearing. "Humans were never meant to survive this," she whispered. Not to me, to the room, to the long ledger of her career, to whatever God the veil pretend not to have. Her vocoder didn't catch it because she'd thumbed it off the way you'd silence a phone, and so the words came out in her own throat, flat and dry and tired, and they were the first veil words I'd ever heard spoken bare. Then she pulled the needle out slow, like she was trying not to wake something. She set it in the sterilization tray. She looked at me the way you look at a glass you've already dropped in the half-second before it hits the floor. I had been a paramedic before the pull. 11 years strapped to this moon, and I still couldn't shake the habit of reading a room for a code. I knew what her face meant. She thought I had about 90 seconds. So I gave her 90 seconds. I let my eyes roll. I let my jaw slack. I let the strap on my left wrist go limp under it. And when she leaned in to check the carotid, I held my breath for the count of 40, which is a thing you can practice in a bunk at lights out for 11 years if you have nothing else. Her 2 thumbs pressed against the artery and her vocoder ticked back on, and she said, in the soft official cadence they use when they've killed something they didn't mean to, "Subject Marsh, Eli. Compound exposure. Time of cessation." She didn't finish. She was waiting for the pulse to stop so she could log it. It didn't stop. It slowed. It slowed the way you'd slow a car coming up on a stop sign you weren't sure was a stop sign. And then it held. 41 beats. 40, 38. I don't know what my heart was doing, but I know what hers was doing, because the inner eyelid started up again. Closed open, faster, and one of her 4 nostrils flared, and her thumb came off my throat as if she'd touched a hot pan. She stepped back from the table. She stood very still. She was deciding something. And then, and this is the part I think about most, even now, even after everything, she reached up and switched off the room's recorder. Not the body cam on her shoulder. The room. She wiped the last 40 seconds. She did it with the small, efficient motion of a person who had done it before for other reasons, and she did not look at me while she did it. When she turned back, her face had gone professional again, the way a doctor's face goes professional when a family walks in. She lifted my eyelid with 1 finger. She said, in clear vocoded standard, "Subject Marsh. Compound exposure, non-lethal at present dosage. Continued observation indicated. Non-lethal at present dosage." She was lying to her own logs. For me, a human. I didn't understand it then. I'm not sure I understand it now. But I had the presence of mind to keep my eyes rolled back and my breath shallow, and to let her wheel me out of the dosing bay and back into the long curving corridor that the veil call the spiral, and that we call, among ourselves in the dark, the throat. The vault sits on the inside of a moon. The moon orbits a gas giant the veil gave a number for, and we gave a name for, and the name we gave it was Brisket, because the first man to see it from a porthole had been a butcher in Tulsa, and said it looked like a side of beef hanging in a cold room. There are 47 of us left. We used to be more. The veil don't tell us how many we used to be, and we have learned not to ask, because asking is one of the things that makes the count go down. They took me from a parking lot outside a hospital in Fresno. I had just finished a 14-hour shift. I had a sandwich in one hand. The pull came down like a held breath, and the sandwich was the last thing I remember tasting that grew in dirt. The vault feeds us on a gray paste. It is calorically complete. It is nutritionally complete. It has, the orderlies have told us, been refined over 70 years to be optimal for human metabolic function. It tastes like wet paper. Twice a year, on what we have decided are holidays. We don't know what day it is on Earth, but we have picked 2 days and called them holidays. The veil give us something they call enrichment. Enrichment is the gray paste with a small disc of something fatty in the middle. The fatty thing is the size of a coin. It is, we think, made of pressed protein. It tastes the way a coin tastes, except in the back of the mouth there is a small phantom whisper of butter, and the older men in the dorm, the ones who remember butter, close their eyes when they eat it, and they chew slowly, and they do not speak for an hour afterward. We call those days butter days. There have been 22 butter days since I came. I have counted them. Counting is one of the things you do. I had been a paramedic for 9 years before Fresno. Before that, I had been a kid in a small town in the Central Valley with a sister who taught me how to ride a bike on a road that no longer existed by the time I was 15 because they paved it. I had been a husband for 2 years and an ex-husband for 1. My wife, ex-wife, had been a nurse at the hospital where I picked up overtime. We had been kind to each other in the divorce. She had asked me the last time I saw her in the cafeteria of the hospital what I wanted next. I had said I didn't know. I had been lying. I had wanted to be a father. I had not told her that because she had decided she did not, and because the thing I wanted next was a thing I would have to find a way to want differently. I never found the way. I tell you this because in the vault you become very specific about what you have lost. The general grief, the grief of earth, of family, of the smell of cut grass, that grief is too big to carry every day, and so you put it down. What you carry is small and specific. You carry the road they paved. You carry the sandwich. You carry the question your ex-wife asked you in a cafeteria. You carry the way a 4-year-old looks at a ceiling that is the color of a bruise, and you carry it, and you carry it, and one day someone offers you a thing, and you say yes because you have been carrying it for so long that the saying of yes weighs less than the carrying. Sierra Tail is what they call a physician of the third chair. There are 7 chairs. The first is for the veil that birthed the first hospital on the homeworld, and she has been dead a long time, but they keep the chair empty out of respect. The second chair runs the vault. Sierra Tail runs the wing where they keep us. She is 211 years old, which is middle-aged for them, and she has the slightly hunched shoulders of a veil who has spent too long bent over small things. I had seen her cry once. I don't mean cry the way we cry. I mean the membrane in her secondary tear duct had gone milky for a few seconds while she was setting a man's broken wrist, and he had thanked her in English and then closed his eyes and died of something else, something they hadn't caught, a clot. She had stood over him for a long time. Then she had logged the death. Then she had gone to lunch. I tell you this because I want you to understand. She was not a monster. The thing she was working on was a monster. She was a woman who had given her life to a monster and who, in the small private rooms of herself, sometimes did not know how to look it in the face. The compound was called Caldex 7. I learned this later, by stealing glances at her tablet while she pretended not to see me stealing glances. Caldex 7 was a veil drug, designed for veil bodies, intended for a veil rite called the burning of the lesser tissues. Once in a veil's life, usually in their late hundreds when the slow rot starts, they elect to take Caldex. It burns out the soft and weak inside them. It reinforces the heart and the lung and the long spinal cord that runs from skull to pelvis like a second spine. About 1 in 11 dies. The others live another century and stand a little straighter. She had been holding the syringe for a veil colleague, third chair like her, a friend. He had asked her to administer it because his own hands had begun to shake. She had set it on the tray next to my dosing tray, which contained a mild sedative, a routine pre-procedure compound we'd all had 100 times. She had been awake for 31 hours. She had reached for the wrong tray. I learned all of that later too. What I knew, lying on the gurney with my eyes rolled back, was that something was happening inside my chest. It was not pain exactly. It was the opposite of pain. It was the feeling of a room you've lived in too long suddenly being aired out. There was a heat in my sternum and a cold along my arms, and somewhere behind my eyes a small steady pressure, like a finger pressing on the inside of my forehead, and I had the distinct sense that something inside me was choosing what to keep. When she left me in the recovery bay, I let myself breathe. I lay there for a long time. The bay was dim. The veil preferred dim. Above me, the ceiling was the color of an old bruise, and there was a circular vent through which the moon's recycled air came down, smelling faintly of iron and the wet stone of their homeworld, which they pump in at low concentrations because the smell calms them. To me, it always smelled like a basement after a flood. I moved my fingers, they moved. I moved my toes, they moved. I tried to sit up and the room tilted, but it tilted the way a room tilts when you stand up too fast, not the way it tilts when you are dying. I lay back down. I waited for the lights to come up. I closed my eyes and did the trick the old paramedic in Fresno had taught me on my first ride along. I went through my body like a man going through a house at night, room by room, checking that the doors were closed and the stove was off. Everything was closed. Everything was off. Everything was, if anything, a little more itself than it had been before. I should have been dead. I lay there and thought about that for a long time. When the lights came up, the second shift came in. 2 Vale orderlies who did not speak to me because they were not authorized to, and they wheeled me back to the dorm where the other 46 of us slept. They lifted me onto my bunk. They left. In the bunk next to mine, a woman named Hannah opened one eye. "You're back early," she said. "They postponed," I said. She watched me a long time. Hannah had been a nurse in Osaka. She had been here 9 years. She knew my face the way you know the face of a man you've shared a wall with for 9 years, which is to say better than I knew it myself. "Eli," she said, "what happened?" "Nothing," I said. She rolled over and faced the wall. After a minute she said, very softly in Japanese, which neither the Vale translators nor most of our bunkmates spoke, "Whatever it is, sleep on it first. Don't decide tonight." I didn't decide that night. I lay in the bunk and listened to 46 other humans breathing in the dark. There is a sound a room of sleeping humans makes that you only notice when you have spent enough years inside it. It is not silence. It is not peace. It is something like the low hum of a refrigerator full of food, a working sound, a sound of bodies kept alive by their own slow machinery. I lay in it. I tried to feel the Caldex in me. I couldn't. It had gone wherever it had gone and become whatever it was going to become, and the only difference I could measure was that the bunk above me, where Halvorsen had snored for 9 years before he died last spring, was empty and quiet, and somehow tonight I did not mind the quiet as much. I slept. I dreamed of the parking lot in Fresno. I dreamed of the sandwich. In the morning Siratail came for me herself. She walked into the dorm. The Vale do not walk into our dorm. They send orderlies. They send the cart. Siratail walked in alone, in her white overrobe, and she stopped at the foot of my bunk and looked down at me, and the inner eyelid was very still. "Subject Marsh," she said, vocoder calm, "come with me." The dorm went quiet. Hannah did not look up from her bunk. She knew better. I followed Siratail out into the throat. She did not take me to the dosing bay. She took me 3 turns deeper than I had ever been, to a small room with 1 chair and 1 table, and 1 wall that was not a wall but a long window of bonded resin looking out into nothing, because there was nothing on that side of the moon but rock. She sat me in the chair. She did not sit. She stood with her back to me and she looked out the window at the rock. "You should be dead," she said. I said nothing. "You should have died in 8 to 12 minutes by spasm. You should have died with foam in your lungs and your eyes hemorrhaging. The compound I administered to you is not survivable in your species. It has never been survivable. We have tested it, not on purpose, on accident like this." She turned her head a fraction. "3 times before, 3 of your kind, 3 deaths." I said nothing. "You are pretending not to be changed," she said. "Why?" I had thought about this in the dark all night. I had not come up with a good answer, so I gave her the only one I had. "Because I'm scared," I said. She turned all the way around then. Her 4 nostrils flared once, in the way that means a veil is reassessing. Scared of what? Scared of what you do to the ones who are interesting. She was very still for a long time. Then she walked to the chair opposite mine and sat down, and she did the strangest thing. She unbuttoned the top fastening of her overrobe, which is a thing a veil does only with other veil and only with close ones, and the small triangular patch of skin at her collarbone showed. It was a gesture. It meant, I am not, for this moment, in my office. Subject Marsh, she said, and then she corrected herself. Eli, I want to tell you something true. Will you hear it? Yes. My friend for whom that compound was intended is named Vorlath. He has been my friend for 140 years. He is dying. The Caldex 7 was his right. He asked me to administer it because his own hands shake too much now to hold the needle steady. I have been preparing for it for a month. I did not sleep last night before, and I did not sleep the night before that. I made the mistake because I have been awake too long. Do you understand what I am telling you? I understood. She was telling me she had killed me by accident. She was telling me she had killed me because she loved someone else. Yes, I said. I cannot tell anyone what happened, she said. If I tell them, you will be taken to the second chair's wing. You will be opened. They will find what the compound has done to you, and they will take it, and they will use it, and they will make more of it, and they will give it to every veil who can pay. And then they will need more humans, Eli, many more, to test the dosing, to refine the compound, to make it safe enough for our children. She did not blink. Do you understand? I understood. And I cannot let you go, she said. Because if I let you go, my friend dies without his right, and the inquiry finds the missing dose, and the inquiry finds you, and we are back at the opening table. What do you want? I said. She looked at me for a long time. Her inner eyelid was open. I had never seen a veil's inner eyelid open this long. It is, I learned later, the equivalent of a human looking at another human without blinking for 2 full minutes. It is a thing they do only in the most private rooms of themselves. I want you to help me, she said. Lie to my people. I said nothing. For a little while, she said. Until Vorlath has had his right. Until I can find a way to make this not catastrophic for your people. I do not know yet what that way is, but I am asking you to be ill. To be slowly, convincingly, plausibly ill. To present symptoms I can chart. To die eventually the way the others died, only later, months later, slowly enough that no one looks closely. And in that time, her hand moved on the table, the 4-fingered hand, the one that had held the needle. In that time we will find a way. A way to what? I almost asked, but I knew she didn't know either. She was telling me she didn't know. Why? I said. Why would you do this? She didn't answer for a while. Then she said, because I have been doing this work for a long time, Eli. Because 3 of your kind have died from this compound on my table. Because I am tired. Because my friend is dying. Because I do not want my last great act in this life to be the thing that turns your people into livestock for hours. She paused. And because, she said, you held your breath for 40 seconds while I checked your pulse. And in that 40 seconds I had time to think. I have not had time to think in a long time, Eli. You gave me 40 seconds. I owe you them back. I looked at her. The light from the window was on her face. Her skin was the pale gray of weathered driftwood. She was, I realized, very old in a way that 211 veil years had only just begun to touch. All right, I said. That was the dilemma. I am going to tell you now plainly, because I have been telling this story to myself for a long time and I want, for once, to tell it to someone else. I said yes for the wrong reason. I said yes because I wanted to live. I told myself, later in the bunk in the dark, that I had said yes because I might find a way to use the time, to learn the corridors, to find a hole in the vault, to free the other 46. I told myself that. I have told myself that for a long time. But the truth The small, ugly truth that lived underneath the larger, noble one was that she had offered me time and I had taken it because I was scared of dying, and I wanted to be alive in the morning, and the morning after that, and the one after that. You should know that about me before I tell you the rest. The HFY stories, the ones the older men used to tell in the dorm at Lights Out, about humans who outwitted aliens through pure grit, pure cleverness, pure stubborn refusal to die. Those stories left out the part where the human just wants another morning. They left out the part where the noble plan grows up inside the cowardice like a tree, grows up inside a fence, and eventually you can't tell which one is holding the other one up. I wanted another morning, so I said yes, and then I had to make the saying of yes mean something. For 3 weeks I was sick. I learned to vomit on command. Hannah taught me. She had been a nurse. She knew the trick, the thumb on the soft palate, the small precise pressure. I learned to walk like a man whose joints had begun to give. I learned to lose my appetite in the cafeteria where the Veil watched us eat, and to make up the calories in the dark from a small cache Hannah brought me, scraps from the kitchen detail where she worked. I had told her on the third night what had happened. She had listened with her eyes closed. Then she had said, "Then we use the time." We. It was Hannah who first said the word out loud. We. As in, we the humans of the vault, the 47 of us, the small bright pilot light of a species the Veil had decided was a resource. We were going to use the time. I told Sierra Tail about Hannah on the 8th day. I had to. Sierra Tail's eyes did the slow closed open and she said, "How many?" "Just her. Keep it to her." "I will." I didn't. By the end of the first month, there were 6 of us. Hannah, me, an engineer named Baboy who had worked oil platforms off Lagos, a boy named Tim who had been 17 when they took him and was 23 now, and angry the way only a boy who has lost his childhood to a hallway can be angry. A woman named Inara who had been a librarian in Damascus and who, more than any of us, knew how to keep a secret because she had grown up keeping them. And an old man named Sully who had been a pipefitter in Belfast and who had been here longer than anyone, 15 years, and who had stopped speaking 3 years ago and started again on the day Hannah told him what was happening. Sully spoke for the first time in 3 years on a Tuesday. He said, "Then we have a chance." That was all he said. He went back to silence, but he started working again. He started fixing things in the dorm that the Veil had let drift, small things, a loose panel, a sticking drawer, a hinge. He was making, I realized later, a map. He was mapping the vault with his hands the way a blind man maps a house, and he was doing it under the noses of the orderlies, because they had stopped seeing him years ago, because he had taught them to. This is what humans do, I have come to understand, when you give them time and a reason. We become invisible to the things that watch us. We become useful in ways the watchers cannot measure. We pass notes in the dark. We pretend to be sick. We pretend to be well. We pretend to be stupid. We pretend to be afraid when we are not, and unafraid when we are. And the pretending becomes a kind of second skin that the things that own us cannot peel off, because they do not know which skin is which. Sierra Tail came to me twice a week. She charted my symptoms. She wrote them in the ledger. She wrote very carefully the slow progressive decline of subject Marsh, Eli, following anomalous compound exposure of unknown origin. She did not name the compound. She wrote unknown origin the way a forger writes a date, with a hand that is practiced. We talked in those sessions the way people talk when they have only each other to talk to. She told me about Vor Lath. He was a botanist. He had spent his life cataloging the small mosses that grew in the high cold valleys of the Veil homeworld. He had a wife who had died 40 years ago and a child who lived on a station around their second son. He was kind, she said. He was the kindest person she had ever known. He was going to have his right in 4 months. I told her about Fresno. I told her about the sandwich. I told her about my sister, who had been 6 years older than me and who had raised me after our mother died, and who would now be 61 years old and probably did not believe I was still alive. I told her about the parking lot. I told her that on the night before the pull I had pulled a man out of a burning car on the 99, and he had thanked me, and I had said the thing you say, which is, "You don't owe me anything," which is, in our language, a kind of prayer. She listened. She wrote nothing down. There was a day in the middle of the second month when I almost lost everything. The second chair came down to the wing. The second chair is a Vale named Corin Vesh, and he is what you would get if you took a hospital administrator and let him become the thing he was always going to become if no one stopped him. He is younger than Sierra Tail by 30 years. He has the smooth, unworn face of a Vale who has never set a bone, and he wears the overrobe of the second chair, the way a man wears a uniform he has been waiting all his life to wear. He came down to the wing on a Tuesday morning without warning, with 2 of his own orderlies, and he announced to Sierra Tail that he wanted to inspect a sample of her current case load. He picked 3 subjects at random. I was the second. She brought me into the dosing bay. The second chair was already there, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, his inner eyelid open and steady. Sierra Tail's hand on my elbow was not steady, but only I felt it, and I made my own steps unsteady to match, and I leaned on her arm the way a sick man leans, and she breathed out through her 4 nostrils in the long, slow way a Vale breathes when she is asking her own body to please not betray her. "Subject Marsh," the second chair said, "Eli Marsh, compound exposure of unknown origin 6 weeks ago, symptoms. Progressive systemic weakness," Sierra Tail said, "reduced caloric uptake, mild ataxia, diminished." "I would like to hear from the subject," the second chair said. He turned to me. He spoke in vocoded standard slowly, the way a Vale speaks to a human he expects to be slow. "Subject Marsh, describe your symptoms." I had not prepared for this. Sierra Tail had not prepared me for this. The second chair did not, as a rule, speak to subjects. He did not consider us speakers. The fact that he was speaking to me was a small, terrible signal, and I knew, in the part of me that had been a paramedic and had learned to read the air in a room when something was about to go wrong, that he had come down here today not to inspect Sierra Tail's case load but to inspect her. "I'm tired," I said. I let my eyes drift to the floor. I let my breath come shallow. I let one hand tremble, just the smallest tremble, the kind that a man could be faking, but that a man who is genuinely sick would also have. "In what way?" I can't. I let the sentence start and not finish, the way the truly fatigued do because their mouths give up before the thought does. "I get tired going to eat. I get tired." "Eating tires you." "Walking, then eating, then I have to lie down." "And before this, 6 weeks ago, you were not tired." "I was a person," I said. 6 weeks ago I was a person." The second chair was very still. Sierra Tail, beside me, was very still. I had not meant to say that. It had come out of my mouth the way real things come out, the way the wrong real thing comes out when you have been faking a fake thing too long and one of the floorboards underneath you is rotten. The second chair watched me for a long time. Then he turned to Sierra Tail. "Open him," he said. The bay went quiet. Sierra Tail's hand on my elbow did not move. Her inner eyelid did not flicker. I have thought about this often. She did not flinch. She had been waiting, perhaps, for him to say it. She had been carrying that sentence in the back of her mouth for 2 months, and now that he had said it, she had nowhere to put her own fear. And so she set it down somewhere I could not see, and she said, in the small, calm voice she used for the small, calm horrors of her work, "Second chair, with respect. Subject Marsh's compound exposure remains under active observation. To open him now would terminate the observation. I would lose the data. You have had 6 weeks of data. I have had 6 weeks of decline. The decline is not yet complete. To open him at this stage would be to interrupt a process I have not yet finished documenting. With respect, second chair, I would ask for 2 more weeks. Then I will open him myself. I will deliver the tissue to your wing personally. The second chair turned his head a fraction. His inner eyelid closed once. He was, I realized, weighing her, not the request, her. 2 weeks, physician of the third chair. 2 weeks. Then I will expect the tissue. You will have it. He left. His orderlies left after him. The door of the dosing bay slid closed in Sierratail's hand, which had been holding my elbow with a steady professional grip the whole time, began to shake. She let go of me. She walked to the wall. She put both her hands flat against it, and she stood there for a long time with her face turned away. I'm sorry, I said. Don't. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it. Eli. I shouldn't have. Eli, she did not turn around. You said the true thing, he did not open you. The true thing is not what undid us. He did not open you because he is afraid of me. He has been afraid of me since I was the second chair before him and chose not to take the first. He is afraid I am the better physician. He is right. He will be back. How long? 2 weeks, then less. He will not wait the 2 weeks. He will come back in 9 days, 10, with a reason. We have to move. I nodded. She turned. Her face was composed. She had put down the fear. I have wondered since where she put it. I have not been able to find a place in myself big enough to hold what she put down that day. Tonight, she said, bring Hannah, bring the engineer. We move the timeline up. We moved the timeline up. In the second month, Vorlath had his right. Sierratail was gone for 3 days. When she came back, her shoulders were a little straighter and her eyes were a little redder, and she did not speak of him for a long time. The right had taken. He would live another century. She told me this on the 4th day in our small room, and then she put her 4-fingered hand on the table and she said, now we plan. The plan, when she told it to me, was small and terrible and almost certainly going to kill us both. The vault, she said, ran on a single fusion stack buried in the moon's rock. The stack fed 2 systems, life support and the long-range comm array. The Veil had not built the moon to be a fortress. They had built it to be a hospital. Hospitals are not designed to keep people in. They are designed to keep contamination out. The locks worked one way. The cameras pointed in. The orderlies had never, in the vault's 70-year history, had to put down a coordinated escape, because no human had ever lived long enough or healthy enough or organized enough to coordinate one. The Veil assumption was baked into the architecture. We were going to exploit the assumption. In 3 weeks, she said, a transport would dock to take a shipment of biological samples back to the homeworld. The transport was crewed by 2 Veil and 1 autonomous loader. The transport had a long-range comm capable of reaching the human pull zone, the rough region of space from which we had been taken. The transport had food for 40 days. The transport had, locked in its sample bay, a manifest of human tissue that, in the wrong hands, meaning ours, would be enough evidence to start a war. She was not going to give us the transport. She was going to look the other way while we took it. I will be in the dosing bay, she said. I will be sedated. You will sedate me. You will leave a note in my hand naming a human you have already killed as the perpetrator. You will leave the security clearance card I have given you on the floor by my chair. You will run. You will take Vorlath's grandnephew, who is the junior officer on the transport, hostage. You will leave the senior officer alive but bound. You will fly the transport. Baboy the engineer, he can fly the transport. I have read his file. He can. You will broadcast on the long range. You will tell your people what is here. You will give them the manifest. And you. I will wake up in the dosing bay with a sedative in my arm and a note in my hand naming a dead man. I will be questioned. I will be questioned hard. I do not know if I will survive the questioning, Eli, but I will not give you up. I am old. I have been a physician of the third chair for 190 years. They will not open me lightly. Sierra, do not. Sierra, come with us. She looked at me. Her inner eyelid closed and opened slowly one time. Eli, she said, I have a friend who has just begun his second century. I have a homeworld that I have loved badly and well. I have a chair. I am not going to a place I do not know with people I have helped to free. I am going to stay and lie for you for as long as I can lie for you, and when I cannot lie any longer I am going to die in the room I have worked in for 190 years. That is the right I am choosing. Do not take it from me. I said nothing. You held your breath for 40 seconds, she said. I am holding mine for the rest of my life. Let me. The night before the run I lay in the bunk and listened to the 46 others breathing. 6 of us knew. 40 would not know until we woke them in the dark and told them to move. Hannah had spent 2 weeks deciding the order, who would wake whom, who would carry what, who would be told only follow, who would be told the truth. There were 6 children in the dorm. The youngest was 4. She had been born in the vault. She had never seen the sky. I thought about her. I thought about my sister, who would be 61. I thought about the man on the 99 in his burning car. I thought about Vorlath in his high, cold valley with his small mosses. I thought about Sierra Tail in the dosing bay with the needle in her arm and the note in her hand, and I tried to find in myself the noble version of what I was about to do, the version that the men in the dorm used to tell at lights out, the version where the human triumphs through pure grit, pure cleverness, pure stubborn refusal to die. I couldn't find it. What I found was this. I wanted the 4-year-old to see the sky. I wanted Hannah to walk on a street with cars on it. I wanted Sully to die in a place that was not a hallway. I wanted my sister to know I had not vanished in a parking lot in Fresno. I wanted Sierra Tail in the small private room of herself to be able to say at the end of her life that she had once, only once, refused to be useful to the monster. That was not grit. That was not cleverness. That was the small, stubborn refusal of a tired man on a bunk to let the morning he had bought with a lie be the only morning. We moved at the 3rd bell. The 3rd bell is the deepest part of the vault's night. The Veil run their facility on a 40-hour day because that is the day of their homeworld, and the 3rd bell falls at what would be, for them, roughly 4 in the morning, the hour at which a Veil on overnight watch has been awake for the longest stretch and is most likely, statistically, to let her inner eyelid stay closed a half-second too long. Sully had figured this out 3 years ago by watching, and he had passed it to Hannah 2 months ago, and Hannah had passed it to me, and I had passed it to Sierra Tail, and Sierra Tail had said, looking at me with something almost like a smile in the corner of her mouth, "Your Sully is a better physician than the 2nd chair. Tell him I said so." I had not told Sully. Sully would not have wanted to hear it. Sully wanted only to fix the door. Sully had the map. Baboy had the cards Sierra Tail had given us, 3 of them, stolen one by one over 6 weeks, each from a different orderly, each replaced with a forgery that would scan green for 40 hours before going red. Inara had the children, all 6 of them in a line behind her, holding hands, the 4-year-old at the front because she did not yet know to be afraid, and her not being afraid was the thing that would keep the others quiet. Tim had a length of pipe Sully had pried from the wall. Hannah had the syringe. The dorm woke in stages. Hannah woke the ones she had chosen first, the strong ones, the steady ones, the ones who would not cry out. Each of them woke the next. By the time the 4-year-old was on her feet, 46 humans were standing in the dim corner light of the dorm, in the loose gray tunics that were all we owned, and not one of them was making a sound. There is a thing humans do when we have decided to be quiet together. It is not silence. It is the held breath of a species that has been hunted and has learned to hunt back. I have not heard that sound since. I do not think I will ever hear it again. It is the sound I would describe, if I could, to anyone who has never been owned. I went to the dosing bay alone. Sierra Tail was waiting for me. She had set up the chair. She had loaded the sedative herself because she did not want me to do it wrong. She had written the note. She had put on her clean overrobe. She had not unbuttoned the top fastening. She would not do that in this room. I came in. She looked up. "Eli," she said. "Sierra." She held out her arm. I held the syringe. I held it for a long time. I had held 1,000 syringes in my life, in another life before the parking lot. I had held them with the small, steady competence of a man who knew where the vein was. My hand now was not steady. "I'm scared," I said. "I know. I don't want to do this to you. I know. You held your breath for 40 seconds for me." "Eli." Her four-fingered hand closed around mine, around the syringe, and guided it to the small, soft place on the inside of her elbow where the vein ran close to the skin. "I have been holding my breath for 40 seconds for a very long time. I am tired of holding it. Let me out." I pushed the plunger. She watched me while it went in. Her inner eyelid closed once slowly and opened, and then she said, very quietly in her own bare voice, with the vocoder off, "Tell your people we are not all the monster, Eli. Tell them some of us are tired." "I will. Run now." I ran. The throat was empty. Sully's map held. The cards held. We moved in a single long line, Inara at the front with the children, Sully behind her because Sully knew every panel and every hinge and could tell by sound alone whether an orderly was coming around the next bend. Twice we stopped. Once an orderly passed at the end of a corridor 60 feet away, and we pressed ourselves to the wall, and the 4-year-old, sensing the change in the air, did not cry. She only reached up and held Inara's hand a little tighter, and Inara looked down at her and smiled with her eyes closed, the way a librarian smiles at a child who has remembered to be quiet in the library. The orderly turned the corner. We moved. The second time we stopped was at the door to the transport bay. The card scanned green. The lock did not open. For 3 seconds, and I will remember those 3 seconds for the rest of my life, because they were the 3 seconds in which I understood what it was to have brought 46 people, including 6 children, to die in a hallway. Boy stood with his hand on the panel and his face still and his mind working. Then he pulled a second card, then a third. He had brought all 3. He had known, the engineer in him had known, that one might fail. He scanned the third card. The lock opened. The boy opened the transport bay with the second card, and the senior officer, a Vale named Heskor, looked up from his console with his inner eyelid already opening because he had heard footsteps that were not Vale footsteps. And Tem hit him once, hard, in the soft place at the base of the neck where the Vale carry their pulse, and Heskor went down. The junior officer was Vorlath's grandnephew, a young Vale named Tyrion, and when he saw what we were he did not reach for the alarm. He looked at us a long time. He looked at the 4-year-old at the front of Inara's line. He pressed the inside of his wrist to the console, and the lockdown protocol that should have triggered the moment Heskor went down did not trigger. "My uncle's right was 3 weeks ago," Tyrion said. "He sent a letter. He said the physician who administered it had not slept in many nights. He said she had been carrying something. His vocoder was very young, very clean. Are you the something?" "Yes," I said. He looked at me for a long time. Then he bowed his head, in the small, precise way the Vale bow when they have decided something they will not change. "Tell the others when you reach them," he said, "that not all of us are the monster either." "I will." He stepped aside. The boy flew the transport. The long-range comm reached the pull zone in 4 hours. The message we sent was Sully's because Sully had written it in the dark in the bunk on the last night, and Sully had been silent for 3 years before this and had a great deal saved up. The message said, "We are here. We are 47. The Vale have been taking us for 70 years. The samples in this transport are the proof. Come and get us. Come and get the rest. Hurry." The transmission was received 11 hours later by a long-range listening station in the belt. 48 hours later, the human fleet that had been chasing the pull signature for 70 years finally had a coordinate. 6 days later they came. 6 days. In those 6 days I did not sleep much. I sat in the cockpit with Baboy and we ran the transport in tight loops behind the gas giant we had named Brisket, and we watched the moon, and we waited for the vault to come for us. The vault never came. The vault, Tyrion told us, was in lockdown. The second chair had ordered an internal inquiry. Sierra Tail was being questioned. The transport was small and we were 47. We slept in shifts on the floor of the cargo bay between the sample crates, and Hannah organized the children's corner with blankets she had taken from the dorm at the last minute because she had thought, even then in the middle of the run, about whether the 4-year-old would be cold. There was a window in the cargo bay. The window looked out at Brisket. The 4-year-old sat at the window for most of the first day with her hands pressed against the resin and her breath fogging it, and she did not speak, and she did not move, and Inara sat behind her with one hand on the back of her neck. We did not yet know what to do with the children. We did not yet know what to do with ourselves. The transport had food. The transport had air. The transport had a long-range comm that had already broadcast the only sentence that mattered. After that, what we had mostly was each other, and the window and the waiting. On the second day, Sully asked Baboy for a tool kit. Baboy gave him one. Sully sat down in the corridor outside the cockpit and began, very slowly, to take apart and reassemble a panel in the wall that had not been broken. Tim watched him for an hour. Then Tim sat down next to him and held the panel. Then Hannah sat down on Sully's other side and handed him screws. By nightfall, by what we were calling nightfall, although there was no night out here, only the slow turn of Brisket and the small steady stars, half a dozen of us were sitting in that corridor doing nothing, watching Sully fix a panel that had not been broken, and not one of us spoke. We needed, I think, to watch a human hand do a human thing in a place that was not the vault. We needed to watch Sully fix something he had chosen to fix. We needed, after 70 years of being mended by hands that were not ours, to see a hand that was ours mend a thing. On the third day, Tyrion brought me into the cockpit and showed me a console. "The second chair is broadcasting," he said. The broadcast was a Vale civil notice. It was, Tyrion translated, a notice of internal disciplinary inquiry against physician of the third chair Sierra Tail, formerly of the Vault Medical Station, on suspicion of dereliction of duty contributing to a containment breach. The notice listed her chair. It listed her age. It listed her years of service. It did not list a verdict. "What does this mean?" I said. "It means," Tyrion said, "that the second chair has not opened her yet. The civil notice is filed before the opening. Once she is opened, the notice becomes a death report. The notice is still a notice. She is alive." "How long can he keep her in the notice?" "Until he decides to open her. There is no legal limit. There is only," Tyrion paused, searching the vocoder for a word that did not exist in standard, "tradition." The tradition is that a physician of the third chair, once notified, is given the dignity of a slow inquiry. A fast inquiry would be, he paused again. Beneath the chair. The second chair will not violate the tradition. He cannot afford to. The other chairs are watching. How slow is slow? Days, sometimes weeks. The second chair is not patient. I think his inner eyelid closed. I think days. I thanked him. I went back to the cargo bay. I sat in the corner where Hannah and the children were sleeping, and I watched the 4-year-old's chest rise and fall, the small, steady working of a small, steady human machine that had spent its whole short life inside a moon, and I thought about Sierra Tail under inquiry, and I tried to do for her what she had done for me. I tried to give her 40 seconds. I tried to think clearly for 40 seconds about what she had given me. I closed my eyes. I counted. At 40 I opened them and the 4-year-old was awake and watching me, and she did not say anything, but she reached one small hand out from under her blanket and put it on my knee, the way a child does when she has seen an adult close his eyes for too long and has decided that the adult needs a hand on his knee. On the 4th day, Tyrion came to me in the cockpit and put his 4-fingered hand on my shoulder. In the human gesture he had taught himself, and he said, "She is still alive." On the 5th day he came back and said, "She is still alive." On the 6th day, when the human ships came over the curve of Brisket like a slow tide of small bright lights, he came back and said nothing. He did not have to. His inner eyelid was closed. I did not cry. I have not cried for her even now. I think this is because she would not have wanted me to. She would have wanted me to log it and go to lunch. She would have wanted me to use the time. We were debriefed for 9 weeks. We were given new clothes. We were given food that had grown in dirt. The 4-year-old saw the sky for the first time on a shuttle window on the way down to a green moon in the belt, and she pressed both her small hands against the resin, and she said, in the voice of a child who has been told a story she did not believe, "Oh, Hana lives in Osaka again. She is a nurse again. She wrote me last winter. Boy works on the rescue ships that go out now to the other places the Veil have been keeping us. There have been 4 other vaults found. There will be more. Boy flies into them with the door codes Tyrion gave us and the maps Sully drew in the months after the rescue, and he brings people home. Sully died last year. He died in a bed in a room that was not a hallway with a window. His last word was a name I will not write here, because it belonged to a wife he had lost 40 years before the pull, and it is not mine to tell. Tem is a soldier. He is angry still. I do not know if he will ever stop being angry. I do not think he should. Inara runs a school for the children who were born in the vaults. They are learning to read in 3 languages. The 4-year-old, who is now 7, is the best of them. And me, I went back to Fresno. I went to the parking lot. I stood in it for a long time. The hospital had been renovated. The spot where I had been standing was now a charging station for ambulances. I did not know what I had expected. I bought a sandwich at a place down the street and I ate it slowly, and I tasted every bite, and I thought about Sierra Tail in her white overrobe with the top fastening unbuttoned, and I thought about the 40 seconds I had held my breath, and the 40 seconds she had given me back, and the long, quiet 190 years she had spent holding hers, and the moment at the end of her life when she had let it out. My sister had not believed I was alive. I went to her house in Visalia, and I stood on the porch for a long time before I knocked, because I had not known what to say, and when she opened the door, she did not say anything either. She looked at me the way a person looks at a photograph that has begun to move. Then she put her hand on my face, the way she had when I was small, and she said my name, and that was when I cried, finally. I cried in the doorway of my sister's house in Visalia, and she cried with me, and we stood there for a long time, and inside the house a kettle began to whistle, and neither of us moved to take it off the heat. It whistled until the water ran out. We let it. I told her about the parking lot. I told her about the sandwich. I told her about the bunk and the gray paste and the butter days. I told her about Hana and Sully and Boy and Tim and Inara and the 4-year-old. I told her about Sierra Tail. I told her about the 40 seconds. My sister listened the way she had always listened when I was small, with her whole face, and at the end she said only, "She sounds like a good doctor." She was, I said. She was tired. "I know what tired is," my sister said. "I'm 61. She poured me tea from a pot that was not the kettle that had whistled itself dry. We sat on her porch. The sun went down over the Central Valley and the sky went the color of a peach, and I thought, the way I sometimes think now, that Sierra Tail would have liked it. The Vale have no sunsets. Their homeworld turns too fast. The sky there changes color only in long, slow seasonal washes, and the small wet stone of their air does not catch the light the way ours does. I think she would have stood on this porch and watched our sky and said nothing for a long time. I think she would have closed her inner eyelid once slowly and opened it. I think she would have understood, finally, what the gray paste had been a poor copy of. I am sorry she did not get to see it. I am alive because she made a mistake. I am free because she chose, after the mistake, to be tired. The HFY stories the men used to tell at lights out always ended with the human winning. They never said how. They said grit. They said cleverness. They said the stubborn refusal to die. They never said that sometimes a human wins because an alien who has spent 200 years building the monster decides, in a small dim room with a window onto rock, that she will not build it for one more day. They never said that humans were never meant to survive this. We weren't. But we did. We do. I think in the end that is the human thing, not the grit, not the cleverness, the willingness to be saved when saving is offered by hands that should not be saving us, the willingness to look at the four-fingered hand on the table and say yes, the willingness to push the plunger when the woman who has decided to be tired holds out her arm and asks to be let out, the willingness after to live the morning she bought us. I live it every morning. I taste the sandwich. I think of her. I tell her in the small private room of myself what she asked me to tell my people. Not all of them are the monster. Some of them are tired. And we, the small bright pilot light of a species that was never meant to survive this, we are the ones who get to carry what the tired ones could not carry any further. We carry it. We carry her. We go.